Welcome to the Livable Roadways Committee meeting today, Wednesday, June 22nd, 2022. If we could please rise for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag. To the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let's just have a roll call, please.
Councilman Citro,
Here.
Cal Hardy, Christine Crespo-Valentin, and Una Johnson is excused. Julie Ham and Mark Hudson are also excused. Waldo Carbo,
Here.
Melissa Colazzo is also excused. David Hay,
Here.
Emily Hinsdale, Christian Leon, Chris Thompson,
Here.
Larry Josephson. Richard Rank is online, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Karen Kress, Matt Lewis, Ben Nisley, Scott Drainville, Bobby Edwards, Brenton Mosier, Jason Jackman is excused. Achilles Cortellis, Catherine Coyle,
Present.
Arizona Jenkins,
Here.
Carlos Ramirez,
Here.
Ray Menza, Sarah Hendricks, I believe they are also both excused. Christina Steffen.
Here.
And Matt Pleasant.
Here.
Did anybody else join in the room?
Yes, let the record reflect that Ms. Crest and Mr. Josephson are also with us also.
Thank you. We do have an in-person quorum. Chair, would you call for a vote of consent for remote participation?
Yes, thank you very much. Can I have a motion for consent, please? So moved. Second. I have a motion from Mr. Ramirez, seconded from Mr. Hay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Is there any opposed? Any opposed online? Thank you. Okay. Do we have any public comment? No public comment. What happened to all our wonderful community members that want to come down and greet us?
This is pretty typical for Livable Roadways.
Thank you very much. Okay, may I entertain a motion for approval of the minutes from May 25th? Motion made by Arizona Jenkins, seconded by Karen Kress. All in favor?
Aye.
Is there any objections? Anyone online? Record reflecting was voting unanimously. Okay, let's go to our agenda items. We have a public participation plan amendment from our TPO staff. Good morning to you, madam.
Good morning. Hi, everyone. I'm Vita Franklin, the TPO. And today I'm just going to go over a few of the amendments that we're proposing for you to approve to our public participation plan.
If you're a little quiet, so let's make sure that we're picked up by the broadcast. Gail, if you have trouble hearing Davida, please let us know, okay?
Okay, so thank you, Lisa. So the public participation plan, basically it guides the TPO's engagement with the public. And it also determines the means in which they engage with us. So if we take a look at the next slide here, we'll see that basically it's a guideline for the TPO. And so every now and then, we take a look at, actually it's every 2 years, we take a look at this plan, how we performed in the previous 2 years in terms of our engagement with the public, taking in any concerns that they may have or ways that we see that we can make things better when it gets in terms of getting in touch with them and keeping them abreast of all the things that we have going on. So these past 2 years, we have seen, evaluating that, especially from our measures of effectiveness report, that there are 2 things that we can update in this plan. And there are also some suggestions that are already in the plan that we're going to sharpen. So the first amendment that we're asking for you to approve would be to take the time frame that we give for review period of our TIP amendments. So TIP amendments are usually what come in from, usually they're from FDOT, or the Florida Department of Transportation. And it's something that would allow for us to amend the TIP. So what has happened is our way that our meetings are lined up is that the length of time has been shortened. So we want to keep the plan honest in terms of what we can produce in terms of a review period. So what we did is we went to the drawing board and we said, okay, if we only have 2 weeks, which is kind of realistic in terms of the timeframes that we get TIP amendments in, if we only have 2 weeks to inform the public, to review TIPs, how can we make those 2 weeks just so worthwhile that the public would be able to be highly engaged and they can give some feedback? And what we found, and I'll show you a slide later on, is that if we really put out there a lot of effort in terms of road signs, social media posts, newsletter articles or press releases, as well as a dedicated webpage for the TIP amendments, that we would increase our public engagement beyond 100-fold. So in the past, when we had our 21-day review period, we didn't really do much of anything except for post on our website that, hey, this TIP amendment is coming up. Now with this extra effort, we've been able to get dozens per each amendment of public responses. So if we go to the next page, so that's one chart in the public participation plan that would have to change to suit this new, robust, and more concise effort, a 2-week blast out there to the public. And then here's another part that would have to change as well, which would just be some verbiage that would change the, again, saying that it would be 14 days instead of 21 days. And then if we go to the next slide, we'll see again some more verbiage. And this one now talks about the robust effort. So again, public notices and advertisements and social media posts, a dedicated web page. And then we also added in, this was some feedback that we received from a community member, to start putting our meeting and events on the calendar pages of major publications such as the Tampa Bay Times. And also, as you see, the press release and newsletter article. And then we've had so much success with this. So although we are changing the time frame from 21 days to 14 days, we are also putting out there this effort that assures that we get a lot of feedback. The next amendment that's going to change, that we would like for you to approve, would be, this is here where it says the procedures for a TIP amendment. So still a TIP amendment, but that you see there where it says 1 week prior to the CAC amendment, CAC meeting. Again, it has to be 2 weeks before the TPO meeting. And I'm sorry if this seems a little confusing, but again, the way our meetings are scheduled is just very difficult to try to get information out there in front of the public before the CAC meeting. If the CAC meeting is just a week or so before the board meeting where they're going to approve or consider approving a TIP amendment. So, so again, it's all about days and scheduling and just ways that we can make our effort better for the time that we have to put information in front of the public. So if we go to the next slide, we'll see again this effort here stated again what it's going to include: social media posts, a webpage on the website, a press release, a newsletter, or article, and road signs. And here is the slide I was telling you about. So when we went out there, we went out strong. So with every TIP amendment you see on the right side there, there's a road sign. We put them in locations of the community, in communities where they would be most impacted by an amendment. In this case, this was the West River District Build Project, and that was to lengthen the Riverwalk project. And so with this particular situation, again, previously we received just about no responses for these TIP amendments. By putting out the road signs, by putting out on the left where you see there's a notice that went out on Facebook. Sometimes we do strategically boost them, which basically would be like an ad where folks that are in particular areas and zip codes were able to put these ads more in front of those populations. So here, this effort here, we got about a dozen responses, which, you know, you can do the math, so 100% improvement, you know, so it's just a major effort that we put out there when we've seen the results. So, yeah, I'm just waiting in the next one. Yes, sir.
Any comments or any questions?
Okay, this was waiting for that last slide there.
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
So the recommended action is that you approve these amendments. Again, these are amendments to the way that we do our public engagement for TIP amendments. And then also, again, it's related to the verbiage that's in there for the time frame for TIP amendments, as well as the effort. So those are the two amendments, basically. Stating the more concise time frame of 14 days, so 2-week last of an immense effort, and then stating what those efforts are. Those are the two amendments. So thank you.
Now, any comments, any questions? Arizona.
It's good to know that you play in the community and the time, because people like bigger older people who don't use Facebook and social media, they want to get it. Is there any way you can like do ads on TV?
Yeah, so sometimes it's per the paper's editorial preference. If we put the TIP amendment, the board meeting that is going to take place to consider approving a TIP amendment, if we put that in their calendar listing, sometimes it does end up in the paper. Again, it's based off of their preference. However, yes, because this amendment says newsletters or press releases, we can strategically, you know, contact different publications, including the TBT, and say, hey, we would like to run this as an ad or, you know, another type of effort. So the answer is yes, but just letting you know the full scope of it.
Mr. Hay.
So, right, just so that I understand, right now you're required to put an ad in the newspaper.
For TIP amendments, no.
No.
No. For the TIP, yes, but not for the amendments.
Is this building on, you still have to put the ad in and work with social media, or remove the ad and just rely on social media?
So the pieces that we are committing to are social media posts, which, so, sorry again, it gets a little convoluted, but posts that can result in ads. So when you put up a social media post, you know, like, hey, board, we would love for you to consider this approval, we can then go on the back end and then identify audiences by zip code or by other demographics that we can then promote that post to. So the amendment involves the posts. The ads are just a practice that we've been putting in place to kind of test out the response that we'll get from the posts.
You could pay to have it promoted.
Right.
You could spend money to make it more broadly. So just like
hey, I went to the lightning page.
Right, but right now, you're required to put an ad in the newspaper for the tip.
Not for a tip amendment, yes, for the tip,
For the tip.
not for tip amendment.
The once a year tip hearing.
So the difference is with tip amendments, we really didn't do much because we weren't required to do much and we hadn't practiced in the past this greater effort that we're seeing that, you know, we can really produce some public engagement response from. So before, we basically put it on our website, which is good because people do go to our website, but, you know, to make sure that we are engaging folks more, that's where we're putting in these different practices. So social media posts, a press release or a newsletter article, and then also besides the dedicated webpage, road signs. And we've actually found road signs to be effective.
Yes, sir, Mr. Carbo.
So are you confident that you're going to reach more of the public this way?
Oh, definitely. So to give you an example, the first effort that we did was for the West Shore interchange, and we had like 24 responses. Prior to that type of effort, if someone went to our website, maybe they would give us a response. So this is, again, just a more proactive effort that we're putting out there. So it's produced. So we definitely know that it'll produce more. Even with those targeted posts or ads where we can specifically say, let's reach out to, let's say, who's a downtown interchange, 33602 zip code, you know, to really get those folks more involved.
Ms. Wall.
Historically, what kind of feedback have you gotten from your signs that you post out, like at intersections to say, hey, call us about this plan?
So usually we put them out for the tip, you know, aside from the tip amendments, the tip, and also the long range transportation plan. And we would get a lot of calls, dozens of calls from folks. We do a good job of putting them at an intersection where someone's going to stop. We'll put a QR code on there, and then so folks can either quickly jot down the number or take a picture and get in touch with us. And so we have had dozens of calls that have come in from road signs.
Did you think about implementing that for the amendments?
I'm sorry, say again?
Did you think about implementing that for the amendments?
That is one of them. So there,
Okay.
yes, there are
Okay.
4 practices: the
Got it.
newsletter article, the dedicated webpage, the social media post, and then the road signs.
Sorry, I missed that.
Mr. Thompson.
So you're thinking of reducing the time by a third, but increasing the media, the
Yes.
mediums that you're doing that. When you were doing the road signs before, and you would get responses, do you know when they would fall into that 21-day period? Were they?
Yes, so interesting enough, and this happens in marketing too, usually the 2 weeks prior to an event or some type of meeting tends to be when people respond the most. To give you an example, with the tip that we just had on June 8th, that public hearing, I would say about 75% of the responses came in the day before, and we also had a group of responses that came in the day of. So that just tends to be the nature of folks to just kind of wait and then jump on.
What's my deadline?
But how we can live with disability, people that can't see, people with vision. How are you reaching them?
So we do make sure that all of our information on our website, as we put up newsletter articles, that they are ADA compliant. So if someone has the software program where it's able to read the page, they should be able to read it seamlessly. So that's a one way that we're able to reach.
The one that doesn't have love me. They hear what they say.
I'm sorry, say.
Someone that's visually impaired would have to have the software to see it on the website.
Yes. Yes.
I believe a lot of those are free, and, you know, we've worked with the, like House for the Blind and others to make sure ours is very legible.
Okay.
We have visually impaired on our transportation disadvantaged board that we've been working with, and we follow their protocols as well.
Any other comments or questions? I just have a couple real quick. We hear catchphrases, information, transparency, things like that. Do you feel the process is being done with as much information getting out and being as transparent as we possibly can.
Yes, and the reason why is because, again, we hadn't had this information out there prior to this effort, except for on our website. So the majority of the feedback that we get from the public comes from social media and then also the road signs. Like, as a matter of fact, social media lit up for the three efforts that we've had with the TIP amendments. You know, we've had a few come back, we've had a lot of shares. And so anyway, so the transparency, I think, social media posts and the other practices we're putting in place helps with that, because we're making sure that this is more visible, and we're really trying to make sure that we're ramping up the engagement effort, where in the past we really hadn't had much to offer.
Because, you know, someone somewhere is going to say something to the effect of, I can't get on a computer. I can't get the daily paper. I am not leaving my house, so I can't see your road signs. You know, I just want to make sure that we're being as effective as we possibly can, so we don't hear those catchphrases like transparency and information.
So one effort that we did put out for the TIP that we are considering this year, and so we can definitely put that in this recommended action, is putting out mailers. So the same way how we have the strategic marketing or boosting of our social media posts to specific zip codes, for the TIP, we actually put out 15,000 mailers into the community based on zip codes that were impacted most closely by different projects. And so for the TIP amendments, we definitely can do that. We have talked about it, so that is an addition that we would welcome into the public participation plan for TIP amendments.
Just to touch on one more thing, you had made the mention that the CAC only meets 1 week before the meeting. Has that been thought about changing that for a little bit more time?
So Lisa may help me out with this, since she may have more history, but from what I understand, it's impacted by the Board of County Commissioners meeting. Is that kind of what has changed? That kind of.
Yes, we do our best at the beginning, at the end of every year, to match up with the board calendar, then the TPO and the city council, et cetera. And the CAC requests their date and time. So each year we adjust that, sometimes because of summer schedules and the mandatory TIP hearing and Temple Terrace, Flint City. It happened this time that occurred, but that's not always the norm.
Thank you, Lisa.
This agenda.
And because of that, I would like to say that staff went above and beyond and had workshops, 2 workshops with the CAC leading up, so that they had ample time to digest it before they had to take action. So they got to see the draft twice, that it only came once to this committee.
This is an agenda item. What is the pleasure of this committee? What would you like to see this committee do?
I would love for you, especially after all of the work that we did, to assure that we can make this 2-week period, because again, I know it can feel counterintuitive to shorten a period of time, but then if you get the the most bang for your bucks in that short period of time, which we did, then it's a great effort. So I really would appreciate, yes, if you could approve this.
I will entertain a motion.
Is it move to recommend to approve? Okay. I move to recommend approval.
Have a motion made by Ms. Coyle, seconded by Mr. Hay. Is there any discussion? Shall we take a roll call vote, or should we just go ahead and let's do a roll call vote, please?
Chair, I think there might be a question. Let's see here. Lisa, are you able to see the chat?
In a minute.
It's from Johnny Wong.
Okay, yeah, let me just tell you this before you take action. Johnny Wong, who's our TIP guru and leader of that team, says Lisa's right. We had a preliminary TIP presentation 2 months prior to the hearing, and a 2-hour pizza party to discuss the TIP in more detail. The last CAC meeting had 3 hours dedicated to just that agenda item. So even though theirs was short in time, they had a wealth of exposure.
I add to my motion that we have pizza next time? Or you bring us breakfast or something.
And before I do the roll call vote, is there anybody who has joined that I did not get during attendance?
Yes, let the record reflect Mr. Hardy is here.
Thank you. Okay, so for the roll call vote, we did have some people join online as well. I'll catch them in the roll call. Chair Citro,
Yes.
Cal Hardy,
Yes.
is Mr. Carbo in the room?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. David Hay,
Yes.
Emily Hinsdale,
Yes.
Chris Thompson,
Yes.
Larry Josephson,
Yes.
Karen Kress,
Yes.
Catherine Coyle,
Yes.
Arizona Jenkins,
Yay.
Carlos Ramirez,
Yes.
Christina Steffen,
Yes.
Matthew Pleasant.
Yes.
Did I miss anybody online? The motion passes 13-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your report. And do we have Ms. Entry? Difficult, please say your last name.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Lizzie Eric. It's a lot easier to say than it is to read. And I will be presenting the ETDM project to you today, and I will start sharing my screen in just a second. Let's see.
Lizzie's our newest TPO member. She joined us from a fellow. We can see it perfectly, Lizzie.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. All right, and we will jump right in to the ETDM. So I know a lot of you are familiar with ETDM since you've had a lot of these come through, but since it is familiar for you and only somewhat new to me, we'll go through this quickly. ETDM is the efficient transportation decision-making process to assess potential impacts of transportation projects on the natural, built, and sociocultural environments. We are currently in the programming screen phase prior to the project development and design. So we're in that middle green diamond. And today we'll discuss the ETDM project on the widening of the Suncoast Parkway from south of Van Dyke Road to State Road 52. First, I'll provide an overview of the FDOT Advanced Notification Package. Second, I'll provide feedback and recommendations from staff. And third, you all will then discuss the project and make a motion with the consolidated comments and considerations from the committee that will then include in the review. All right, so beginning with the project location, the proposed project is located in both Hillsborough County and Pasco County, and it runs along the Suncoast Parkway from just south of Van Dyke Road to State Road 52, and it will be for approximately 16 miles. The project proposes capacity improvements and then also potentially will include new or modified interchanges. And the project manager is listed here. If you have questions for them, you can send those in, or you can also direct public comments to them. So the purpose is to increase capacity, address future traffic demand, and enhance safety and evacuation capabilities along the parkway. The project will also evaluate existing interchange performance and then identify potentially new access locations. Regarding the need for the project, according to the 2021 Florida Turnpike Report, overall, the Turnpike will require additional capacity by 2050. More specifically, this segment will require additional capacity by 2035 to address the projected transportation demand increases and also maintain acceptable levels of service for commuters and all others taking local and regional trips on the Suncoast Parkway. To further address transportation demands, this project will evaluate existing and potentially new interchanges. FDOT also expects that the capacity improvements will enhance the Suncoast Parkway evacuation route and safety. Regarding safety, there were 2 fatal lane departure related crashes that occurred since 2018 within these project limits. And the AN reports the capacity improvements may help decrease crashes associated with congestion. Lastly, the proposed improvements are anticipated to occur within the existing right-of-way unless they identify a need for new interchanges. These next slides will address community and cultural considerations. So the existing land use is approximately 1/3 recreational, as well as public, residential, and agricultural. And the future land use surrounding the project corridor will continue to support those. Some considerations on mobility and recreational and protected lands are that a bus route is in Pasco County within the project area. 5 existing trails are in the project area, 1 future trail, and Starkey Wilderness Preserve and various easements are also located in the area. Some social considerations for the proposed project area are that approximately 1,300 households live in the project study area, and 4.6% of those households are below the poverty level. The minority population is 38.9% of the total area population, and limited English proficiency accounts for 6.34% of the population. Some cultural considerations are that there are a total of 33 known archaeological or historical sites of varying ages, but also GIS data is missing for about 22% of the project area. So there are potentially unrecorded resources that are present, and FDOT anticipates moderate involvement regarding historic and archaeological sites, and they note that a cultural resource assessment survey will be included in the PD&E study. Some environmental considerations are that there are 754 acres of wetlands present, consisting of various types of wetlands and vegetation, and also 38% of the project area occurs within the 100 and 500-year floodplains. The AN also reports that the proposed improvements will primarily occur in the existing right-of-way where the floodplain impacts have already been compensated. Just some additional environmental considerations are that portions of the project corridor are natural resource priorities and critical conservation areas, particularly for the Florida scrub jay, the Florida blackbird, and an active wood stork colony. Additional assessments and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service consultation will likely be required. Some physical considerations are that noise levels will increase during the construction, and FDOT anticipates moderate noise and vibration impacts from the higher traffic volumes. There will be localized impacts on air quality during the construction, but FDOT does not anticipate permanent effects. Additionally, there are contamination sites present in the project area and various infrastructure considerations to account for. Okay, so the following slides from here on will address the proposed project's consistency with TPO and Planning Commission plans and studies and staff recommendations. Regarding Vision Zero and speed management action plans, this segment is not identified as a high injury network corridor, but Upper Tampa Bay Trail and the trailhead were identified in the Safe Access to Park study. And also regarding trails, the Suncoast Trail does run adjacent to Suncoast Parkway, and it crosses the Lutz Lake Fern Road and Suncoast Parkway interchange. Another thing to note regarding speed management is that there are 4 schools located at the same interchange. as noted previously, minority population is 38.9% of the total population in the project area, and 4.6% of households are below the poverty level. Additionally, this project is not listed in the TPO's LRTP, nor the state's TIP. And these are some considerations from the comprehensive plan mobilities section. So related to widening impacts, projects should avoid, minimize, or mitigate impacts to neighborhoods and underserved communities. The policies also provide feedback and considerations for safety features, such as signalized crossings and following complete street guidelines and Vision Zero principles. And then some bike ped considerations are that projects should build a comprehensive connected trail system and accommodate existing and future trails and facilities. The Suncoast Parkway is a state road, so the county context classification is not assigned, but policies applicable to county roadways in the project area are, again, to follow complete street guidelines and consider the scale and character of the surrounding land use. Some environmental, historic, and noise considerations here are to minimize adverse impacts on natural and cultural resources and residential areas, and coordinate with local and state agencies. So here we have the future land use element. So some considerations from that is that the future land use classifications are primarily intended for low density residential development. So the widening may impact residential communities along the Suncoast Parkway. So emphasis is really placed on protection from incompatible land uses and mitigation measures. And widening noted here is it may encourage greater connectivity, but it also must be done in keeping with compatible surrounding uses. So looking at the community plans, the project area does run through Lutz, which is a low density, semi-rural, single family residential community, and also Keystone and Odessa, which are rural communities. So according to these community plans, if suburban development pressure from Pasco does necessitate roadway reconfigurations, then the plans aim to manage traffic and drive that traffic to the Suncoast Parkway rather than widening local and arterial roads to sustain the character of the communities. So additionally, to ensure livable roadways in the community, they also encourage multi-use trails and bikeways along roadways and preserved greenway corridors, and also the appropriate placements of sidewalks for schools, parks, and other public uses. Some of the environmental and sustainability considerations from this section are that wildlife habitats must be protected and conserved, and it also emphasizes the need to identify, promote, protect, and preserve wildlife corridors and linkages. Additionally, developments adjacent to natural resources and preserves must take measures to prevent adverse impacts. The protection and conservation of wetlands and other surface waters, the 100-year floodplain and habitats are also identified in the comp plan policies. And furthermore, the project is located in a Zone 1 potable water protection impact zone. It's close to a Zone 2.
Hey, Lizzie, maybe
Yeah.
you turn off your video and it'll help the audio stay solid.
Oh, okay. Yep.
I'll tell Jason.
Okay. You guys can still see the screen though, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So just wrapping that up, and this is in a more vulnerable area for groundwater contamination. Okay, and the staff recommendations, this is just a summary. So we'll circle back to this slide as you guys are going through your discussions. But the recommendations regarding the capacity improvements is that the widening could help alleviate future pressures on local and arterial roads and encourage greater connectivity. But again, that must be compatible with the surrounding uses. Some additional information is that FDOT identifies a need for capacity improvements, but the number of lanes for widening was not established in the AN. Regarding the trails and sidewalks, we want to maintain existing and encourage future trails and sidewalks, but also maintain safety between the trails and the roadways. Regarding mobility and interchanges, follow the complete street guidelines and Vision Zero principles, utilizing the traffic calming measures and innovative and also multimodal interchange designs, and then focus on speed management, particularly near schools, trails, and parks. Some of the environmental recommendations are to protect the natural resources and wildlife corridors and the floodplains and the vulnerable groundwater contamination areas, and then also collaborate with EPC and related agencies. The sociocultural recommendations are to minimize the adverse impacts on cultural resources and also residential areas. So recognizing and preserving the archaeological and historic sites, and then also coordination as needed with the resource agencies, environmental staff, and also citizens. And then physical considerations are to follow safety protocols during the construction process. And then if fences or walls are included, then set back those according to the rural or urban service area. All right, and so that concludes the presentation on this ETDM proposed project. If you guys have questions or comments, Allison Ye will also be here to help take those comments and questions, but also FDOT is requesting specifically that we consolidate the comments from the committee in a comprehensive comment and add those into the review. So if there are additional or public comments, then we can also send those to the project manager, or we can submit those separately as a public comment. So today what we're asking is just a consolidated comment that we can include in the review. And I will go back to the recommendations. So that can be kind of your starting point. But if you guys need me to go to any other slides, please just let me know. Thank you.
Comments or questions?
I have a question.
Mr. Cook?
Is part of the action you're wanting us to take is not just to add additional recommendations, but also to move to recommend these as well?
Sorry, Lisa, you can.
Sorry, she was looking at me. You're right, actually.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
Yes, staff reviewed it from all agencies and came up with this comprehensive list. But you guys are a great resource to catch anything else we did or disagree with anything from your perspective.
So not just to.
So you're moving staff recommendation and anything else, but it needs to summarize the whole room's comments if there is some whole room's comments.
Was there any conversation or recommendation just to not do the project? Considering it's not an LRP, it's not
Yes,
anything.
I believe number one is that we haven't been told what the capacity of widening is, one, so we're like, it's 1 lane, 2 lanes, so we have concern there. And is there a need? Because it's not even in our LRTP. I think maybe it should be set stronger. If the committee thinks it should be set stronger, like, when and why?
Okay, that's kind of where I'm going. All right, let me read these closer.
Mr. Hagan?
I had a question, and
Answer.
under this review, I know we're supposed to be looking at environmental, and I brought this up before, I don't think the induced demand of the widening is looked at. I believe that's correct, right? I'm getting a nod, yes. But in the slide presentation, FDOT states, and I guess this is from FDOT, they say do not anticipate permanent effects when they talk about air quality. Is there an explanation about that over that we have, that why they can make that statement?
I think they were talking about the air quality as a result of construction. That's temporary. That's what they're
So
referring to.
but they don't look at the overall impacts to air quality with the widening.
DEC is continuously measuring the overall impact to air quality, but you're right, they're probably not measuring site-specific, but they're responsible for the air quality during construction.
But they're not responsible for air quality once the road is functioning?
I'd have to get more specific project manager, but what I think happens is the air quality is measured from a regulatory standpoint countywide, right? So if the capacity increase has an increase in air quality, that would be captured. Has a detrimental effect to air quality, that would be captured. And they monitor the air quality continuously, right, on a daily basis, summarize the data on a monthly basis.
But so FDOT does not look at and correct me if I'm wrong, FDOT does not look at air quality impacts based on their projects that they're managing or running.
I think, David, they have to, because they have to be responsible for the construction site. As to the exact way they monitor it, I don't have an answer for you at this moment, but I could find out.
Because I'm not DOT, but this is the early and efficient transportation input on the concept of the roadway that then, because I read the materials, will lead to a project development and environment study, which goes into details, and they do have whole environmental air quality reports and stuff when
Right.
they're in the process.
That's part of the environmental impact.
This, they're like studying whether they're gonna study. So they don't have all those details.
We all know who you are, but just for the record, please state your name.
I'm Allison Ye, also with the TPO staff. Just want to say, this particular report that you got is more preliminary than the ones you've seen me present in the past. They really didn't even have the number of lanes designed. So I think Lucia's did a great job of trying to dig into information we didn't actually have a lot of. And regarding the recommendations, you can adopt the staff recommendations along with your own comments, or we will submit staff recommendations regardless based on our analysis. But we also want to submit this body's formal comments into record. So this is to help kind of summarize some of the things that were said. So I guess I want to say you don't have to agree with all of these. You could also adopt your own separate livable roadways action item, those specific comments.
Mr. Hay.
So we could adopt that based on the information, I guess, that we have that's not in the long-range transportation plan, that they shouldn't even start down this road of looking at this, because if it hasn't been identified by the community as a need, I'm not sure why FDOT feels like they need to start studying it. Because what happens, this is just my opinion, what happens, it seems with FDOT, it seems like they start to go down the road, and then they get to a point where they say, well, we're already doing this already, so it's too late to stop it. So
Right.
is
So
that,
Lizzie, if you go back to the first slide with the green diamonds.
Mhm.
Yeah. So right now you're in those two green diamonds are really on programming screen. That's when we usually get these. Where it cannot go backwards is when it gets beyond that purple design box, when you have all the national environmental approvals done, and permits. So this is early on the screen. That's exactly why they are to bring it to us right now. So there's an objection. So David, like the comment you just made, if the committee agrees with you, you could adopt that as the committee's formal comments, and we will, submit it that way. But we'll also have staff recommendations based on land use planners, environmental planners, and transportation planners analysis.
I guess I'm just trying to figure out what, and I agree with David, once it gets ingrained, it gets ingrained. And they've already spent money on this initial study and looking at it when they could be spending money on the projects that are actually identified, even just looking at projects.
I would say the need for this particular project is not as well fleshed out as it usually is.
And yet we're spending taxpayers money on staff and DOT and engineers and everybody. And it's, I hate to preach, but at the same time, it's like, and also to use a road pun, but why go down that road when we have roads and trails and other connections that are clearly identified that are funded and unfunded that need to be worked on? But those engineers on those jobs, it's just as simple as that. It doesn't make any sense to me.
That's a valid response. So we could do that and also ask for more clarification on the purpose and need for the project. You know, they had told us that this is the information they have so far. They plan on coming back to us in third quarter 2023, so next year. They mean fiscal year, then that would be this, actually that would be spring. Yeah, 2024. Fiscal years go from July to June.
And by then they'll have a concept design.
Right.
Also, we will have launched into our update to the LRTP with new modeling and data from Pasco County. We may concur there is some sort of need. We don't know, but with the info we have today, from our perspective from Hillsborough County.
Well, it's not in the state TIP right now even, so it's really in the preliminary conceptual stage. Well, it's gonna be on planning, but.
Any other comments or questions? Because I'm going to play devil's advocate. I'm just going to throw this out there to the universe. In this planning stage, someone out there, someone is going to be saying, okay, we're going to go down that rabbit hole. FDOT is telling us what we have to do. But in the future, we may have, instead of needing to widen this, we may have rail. We may have rapid bus system. We may have some alternative to this. And it just seems to me, and I'm playing devil's advocate, I'm just speaking for somebody out there. It just seems to me that all the alternatives haven't been looked at. It's and again, FDOT is a great organization. I'm glad they work with us. But it just seems we're going down the rabbit hole. This is the only way, this is the way we've always done it. This is the best way. And we're wanting you to agree with us. So I put it out to you.
So I have to say, when we submit these comments, we're not approving this project. We're truly just commenting, even the staff comments. So I think we can say that, we can.
Can you go back to the recommendations?
Sure. Facilitate a more detailed conversation. We've actually asked the project manager if they want to present it. We need to go to the last slide.
And then I'll make a statement after you.
If I may, I'm okay with the recommendations. What I would strengthen in here is in capacity improvements, additional information. Right off the bat is there needs to be a clear need. We need to see more information before we go down the path. Like, and alternatives, like a full analysis, because it was already stated that there's really no fatalities. There's a whole host of social, economic, and environmental concerns about widening this. So it's like, where's the balance? So I put that right up front in at least the first two. And then number 7, physical considerations, not just fences and walls and stuff, and not just spread of dust, but going back to what David said, you may even need to add in additional, some type of buffering or landscaping or something to absorb all the other contaminants. Now, I know there's a long-term maintenance issue and who takes that on and blah, 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 but that all needs to be considered in those other impacts from air quality.
When they talk about spread of dust, it's during the construction period, but you're talking about long-term.
Long-term.
That mitigate the, emissions effects.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you could adopt all these and append the comments or specifically state with number one you'd like to add, what you'd like to add number 7. There's a couple of ways of doing this. And David, you could request an induced demand study.
Well, just,
Please.
number one, on the, where the recommendation says if the travel demands require widening, I think that goes to your point. It shouldn't just be require widening. Alternative could be a rail going down the middle or a separate bus, I guess that would be widening, separate bus lane, but
Still right of ways.
it's still right of way, right? It maybe,
So you want to see alternative analysis in that on
Yeah.
the project. They usually have alternative analysis, but it's not like it sounds. It's usually like we could go with 2 lanes or 4. Like I said,
it's road, but it's not like other, even if they go, well, we're not gonna widen, but we're gonna reserve right of way for future non-vehicular, modes like rail or some other sort of, I don't know, but it's always just defaults to widening. That's gonna magically solve the transportation problems.
Mr. Ramirez.
On a lot of the roadway projects that I've worked on, we've had a typical section of what we're going to build, and we also have an ultimate typical section that takes into account any kind of future likelihood growth, whether it's rail or lanes or. Was that done in the Suncoast? Do we have any information on that?
I don't think, Lizzie, we can look at the data. I don't think I saw any alternative analysis.
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
He wants to know if there was any alternative analysis done, because typically when you design these, you have, more than one alternative for the project. But I don't think I saw that.
Yeah,
No.
with the
The original.
original design, was there a future layout done, future analysis done?
So you have a,
I'm sorry, I misread. I happen to know that this thing they asked us to look at does not require any additional right of way. So it is predictable that they consider the future needs in the right of way. And that's why they have ample room to do what they're proposing inside the existing right of way. So David, they are not proposing widening. They're just providing additional capacity, which hasn't been clarified. And we don't have to support it.
you don't have to support it.
We're just asked to comment. That needs to be in the form of a unified, everybody agrees, one motion.
But if you want to comment individually, we have to send it
Yes.
to the project
Yeah.
manager individually.
Yeah.
That's, your desire.
I'm just in the mindset, I'm not a traffic engineer, I'm just a person who uses the roads. But I'm of the mindset, what are the alternatives? If we do this, if we recommend this, what's going to happen from this moment forward? What if we say no? What if we say we don't want to do this, we don't recommend this? What are our alternatives? And again, why are we spending so much money on this when there is, the future's unknown? Here in Hillsborough County, we're in this, again, it's radical.
I think that can be a comment that's appropriate for this level, this stage of the study. It really is. That we don't feel there's I shouldn't say it, but, what the committee feels the need for the.
Mr. Hardy?
Yeah, this is through Florida Turnpike, correct? And that's an authority,
They're part of DOT.
but I think they were set up through state authority.
Yeah.
Do you know, I was actually curious if y'all have like the founding charter of those, or if y'all could find that
We could
for
probably
us?
find it.
All right, yeah, that's it. It's not really comment on this. And it got into thinking about with, and Greg Slater was talking at one of the meetings recently, I can't remember what, but he was talking about how VIA has transit written into their charter, I believe. And it was just one of the things that.
You're
like,
curious if that could be an alternative. Okay.
Right,
We can find it.
on the
Yeah.
turnpike.
Mr. Ray?
Just a follow-up, do we know if this has been identified in Pasco County as a priority?
So I don't think the dam identified that either. I can check with Pasco County, check with you.
Just curious if their needs affect us.
Well, they're going to have to comment. Not every county comments like we do. We bring it to our committee. Sometimes they might have a staff comment. We can check with the planners and ask them and see what. Yeah.
But I happened to review their comp plan amendment for corridor preservation, and they did have lanes on many of their roads that did not match ours on the border, so we commented. This included. But as she stated, it's not even in the statewide plan saying we need it yet, so I don't know if it's relevant.
Is there an
Pasco.
engineer at DOT out here? Is it annoyed by the traffic? I mean, I don't think it's here.
Pasco County does list the project in the PD&E phase in their LRTP.
Well, they're along,
Yeah, they're on.
so.
They're 2045, right?
Environmental considerations of Keystone be damned.
I think this committee for having this discussion is something that we need to have, because I am open for suggestions on any type of motion pertaining to this agenda item. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Joyce.
I think the intent here is to widen to the middle in the median. Since I was the chief engineer on the first section of the Census Parkway, that's what I remember. They're not going to widen to the outside. So I think whatever was going to happen originally was all going to be done in the median. Now, that doesn't provide for, that once you put like 2 lanes in the median, it doesn't leave much else. You may have room for another lane for high occupancy or bus or potentially even transit. But I think that you definitely, we're on the verge of talking about getting rails coming to Orlando, maybe coming to Tampa. And, a lot of development is ongoing north. And wouldn't it be great if we actually got a rail system and we could put that rail system in for people to travel south, because we're running out of land quickly in Tampa. Pasco's growing.
So something that's interesting in the asset allocation report is that the title says widening, but actually throughout the document, they refer to some type of capacity increase. They don't actually identify widening. It's some other possibilities. I'm not sure why it wasn't.
Can we work on the first
Yeah.
recommendation then, as opposed to using the word widening in the recommendation to actually say capacity increase? And then put in a strong look for alternatives, such as rail or rapid transit.
Want to do it live, or we can start the slide? Yeah.
Also, as Mr. Ramirez said, usually you provide some type of typical section that's even at a planning stage, some type of idea of where the capacity increases are going to occur. If that widening occurs on the outside, then every interchange has to be reconstructed almost completely. And all the toll stations and all of that. So that's why I said I think that the intent was to do it in the median, which would be the easiest way. But we don't know that, and we don't know, how much room is in the median. I think it was like 60 feet or something like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, we had more trouble with getting information on this, specific information on this particular project.
And with lack of information, if the committee doesn't want to take action, that's also an action we can choose to take. So, but.
I would recommend putting in some of your comments. You had some good comments about you for studying increased demand alternatives and rail. And, you know, I think it might be useful. That doesn't preclude you from getting more information or us trying to invite the project manager here earlier than 2023.
Don't we have a,
But
don't we have one already in place? With the whole well station?
Don't we have rail coming to the old rail station?
Yeah, we open that whole one.
Brightline's not coming to Union Station. It is coming to Ebor, but not to Union Station.
Pretty close.
That's separate. And
All right, committee, thank you for the robust discussion.
Excuse me, Chair.
Oh,
Lisa, can you see the comments? Matt Pleasant had one before he had to hop off.
okay. You scroll. In the top off. He's at home with his child, has to hop off early. Is that the one? Oh, wait, up, sorry. It's hard to do with my teeny tiny. Okay. Matt Pleasant says, all widenings seem to take on an air of inevitability and become hard to stop later on. I agree that we should request more evaluation of alternatives and widening, and at the very least, a stronger purpose and need. So kind of strengthening the discussion and the staff.
all right, committee, recommendations on motion. Ms. Coyle,
Can I make a first motion, like just what to change, maybe a number 1?
who's gonna write this down?
Or could you live edit it or computer?
Okay,
I would recommend that widening be replaced with, if the travel demands require adding capacity to the Suncoast Parkway, comma, then alternative transportation analysis must be done to include alternative modes such as rail and reserving, what do you want to say? Don't say and reserving, just period at the end of the rail.
making it priority.
Yeah, making it a priority, making it a priority. And then capitalize it, it could, let's see, adding capacity could help alleviate future pressure on local energy roads and encourage greater connectivity. Added capacity must be compatible with surrounding uses and consistent with Hillsborough County LRTP, community needs and stated improvement desires. I don't know how to say that. You know what I'm trying to say. Help me with that. Got that?
Yeah, the minutes are right.
And we also have our recording secretary.
Yeah.
One, and then there was something changed.
And the other thing, every place where it says widening, change it to additional capacity or added capacity. Get away from
Because that could
widening.
be any mode.
How about additional capacity and other modes of transportation?
There you go. You do numbers 5 and 7 if you want.
7 too.
Yeah, on 5, I would recommend, let's see, I mean, all this sounds good, but then impacts, let's see, the study of induced demand and the additional air pollution impacts should be evaluated. And maybe make it clear that it's not just the impacts of the construction, but it's the impacts of the functioning of their roadway and their impacts.
The impacts of the capacity.
Capacity increase, and I would assume increased traffic. And then 7, I would assume, spread of dust and other pollutants into the air. Dust makes it sound like,
Okay, all toxins.
all toxins in the air.
You can just say airborne.
Airborne contaminants, yeah. And then additional buffering, screening, and landscaping.
Just keeping with the community character, maybe.
It says all safety, it says safety protocols, so that could be one of them, or is that to list them specifically in one thing?
You want to say follow health and safety protocols? You want to talk about air quality.
That sounds good to me.
I don't want to put words in your mouth.
No, that sounds good.
Any other additions? Any other requests?
We'll request more information. As part of the review, we were allowed to ask for different reports. So knowing your concerns, we request additional information. Just a matter of when it gets back to us, I think.
So that that's on a number 2. You're gonna strengthen that up.
Yeah, FDOT needs to identify the need for capacity. Must identify. You're missing that word in CFCAG, identifies.
Well, thank you.
We'll just have a discussion from 2 different members. So we need an action.
All right, now,
I remove, okay.
are you going to move this?
I'll move to recommend the recommendations as amended by the group discussed today.
We have a motion made by Ms. Coyle, seconded by Mr. Hay. Any further discussion? Any discussion online?
No new discussion online.
Let's have a roll call vote, please.
Councilman Citro,
Yes.
Cal Hardy,
Yes.
Waldo Carbo,
Yes.
David Hay,
Yes.
Emily Hinsdale. Let me check and see if she jumped off. If she did, Christian Leon is also online.
She was going to go to CTST.
She's still there, but not responding. Christian Leon. Christian, you're self-muted.
Yes. Okay, yes.
Thank you. Chris Thompson,
Yes.
Larry Josephson,
Yes.
Karen Kress,
Yes.
Catherine Coyle,
Yes.
Arizona Jenkins,
Yeah.
Carlos Ramirez,
Yes.
Christina Stefan,
Yes.
and Matt Pleasant has left online. So the motion passes 12-0.
Thank you for your comments. Sounds like you would like more information when we can get it back to you for the status report.
Ms. Shea, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
You did a great job.
Thank you all so much.
Committee members, thank you very much for all your help with this. I'm glad when we have a lot of these discussions like this. Thank you very, very much. All right. Ms. Perk, we have you online, do we not?
I believe you do. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can.
Okay, and you just sent me a message to show my screen. So you want me to advance the slides?
If you're comfortable with that, if not, I can do it for you.
I'm comfortable.
Great.
Okay, so let me click this and do you see my slides?
We do, but it's not full screen yet. So if you go to display settings at the top.
Well, can I share my screen because I have it up on full setting on my screen? So
Just, if you go to display settings up there at the top and change it, then it should flip to full for us as well. It's right in the center. It says display settings. Hit the little arrow,
Right next to
a little to your left.
Oh.
Left, you move.
At the very top,
The left,
the other side,
okay.
there you go.
click the down arrow.
And which one? View
Right.
everyone.
Right at the end of the word settings, click that arrow.
I don't see that.
Right
You
where
can
you're
go-
sitting.
It's right above your cursor.
I think she said she had full screen on. She might need to hit screen on it. She might.
No, I see everyone webcam screenshot.
That's fine.
We'll go with what you got. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Well, good morning.
Good morning.
I am Loretta Kirk, the Chief Financial Officer from HART. And this is a presentation on our proposed budget for fiscal year 23. This proposed budget was presented to the HART Finance and Audit Committee on May 25th, 2022. And as I stated, this is a proposed budget, so it's our base budget, subject to change based on feedback from the HART board, from the public, and from our CEO, Ms. LeGrand. After budget deliberations, the goal is to have the HART board approve this budget on September 26th. This is the agenda for today. I want to talk about our projected service, our operating budget, our 5-year plan, the detail of our 5-year plan, and certainly you all know that the first year of a 5-year plan is the capital budget. So I'll go over the capital budget in summary and in detail. This is our proposed level of service for fiscal year 23. It summarizes our revenue miles, revenue hours, and ridership by mode. You can see for fixed route, we are projecting 8,199,395 for miles, hours 662,200, and ridership 12,032,360. For paratransit, you can see the numbers: miles 1,000,008, revenue hours 120,000, and ridership almost 196,000. Streetcar, miles 125, hours 23,000, ridership a little over 1 million rides. And for all of HART, revenue miles 10,134,131, hours 806,148, ridership 13,299,865. The next two slides summarize the operating budget as required by state statute and our policies. This is a balanced budget, so revenues and expenses total $111,899,629. In terms of the revenues, we are projecting an increase of 9% for ad valorem, and in accordance with HART policies, we only budget 95% of the projected ad valorem. We are going to use over $19 million for ARP funding, which is the American Rescue Plan Act COVID relief funding. In fiscal year 23, the federal operating grants, that is FTA Section 5307 funding of $4.4 million. That is basically to cover maintenance for streetcar and paratransit. State operating grants, we're projecting at $8.9 million. Fares and pass revenue, $12.6 million. And then you can see the other revenues: local contributions, 2.6, advertising income, 500,000, other income, 946,000, Tampa Historical Streetcar, 500,000. And I think you all know that that number will be adjusted based on the streetcar budget. Interest income, 84,000. Again, for total operating revenues, 111,899,629. For expenses, some of our assumptions include, well, certainly this budget is based on 840 FTEs. The wages you can see are increasing, and that's primarily due to the impact of a recently negotiated labor agreement for the ATU, and we also negotiated a new agreement for the Teamsters. Healthcare is projected to increase by 10%, and so our total personnel costs, including healthcare and fringes, 77,902,968, and consistent with most transit systems, you can see that personnel costs are about 70% of the budget. Other expenses are operational contract services, 8.2 million, parts and supplies, almost 6 million, insurance costs, 4.9 million, fuel and oil, 6.8 million, and you can see that has increased over the years, and I think everyone is realizing that increase. Administrative other, 3 million, contract services on the administrative side, 1.6 million, legal services, 1.2, utilities, $1 million, marketing and printing, 511,000, taxes and fees, 382,000. Again, for total operating expenses, same as operating revenues, 111,899,629. This is our 5-year capital plan, fiscal year 23 to 27. You can see over the next 5 years, we expect to contract for 351,696,777. And you can see the detail for each year. Fiscal year 23, 45.7 million. Fiscal year 24, 66 million. Fiscal year 25, 60.4 million. Fiscal year 26, 55.2 million. And fiscal year 27, 124.2 million. And as you know, this is a rolling plan. Next year, we'll have fiscal year 24 to 28. So we'll always have 5 years in the 5-year plan. You can see the detail for 5 years, rolling stock and maintenance, 134.7 million, facilities and construction, 151.1 million, technology, 14.8 million, planning studies, 4 million, bus stops and shelters, 16 million, the BRT, 30 million, safety and security, 782,000, and maintenance equipment, 195,401. The next several slides just list the detail of the capital plan, and you can view the slides as I advance them. For, as I mentioned, for revenue, vehicles and maintenance, the total for the 5-year plan is 134 million, and you can see the detail for each year and the categories for each year. Certainly the main category here is for, replacement of buses, and you can see the streetcar replacement and expansion in fiscal year 27 for $50 million. Those are the two major categories for the 5-year plan for revenue vehicles and maintenance total. Do you want me to pause to see if there's any questions as I go along, or should I continue?
Why don't you continue, and we'll ask our questions at the end.
Okay. 5-year plan for facilities and construction. Again, 51,138,000, and you can see the detail for each year. Again, the major project for facilities and construction is the heavy maintenance facility at $100 million. And then we do plan to expand paratransit, so you can see real property acquisition at $40 million And those are the main categories for the 5-year plan for facilities and construction. I'll just pause a minute so you can see that slide. This is technology. Of course, we will budget for future years, but right now we've only budgeted for fiscal year 23. So this certainly will probably change as we continue with our budget deliberations. But for fiscal year 23 and for the 5-year plan right now, $14.8 million. And the main item for technology is certainly our new CAD AVL, computer assisted dispatch, automatic vehicle locator system, at $13.4 million. The other categories in the 5-year plan, bus stops and shelters, you see that we're budgeting $3.2 million for each year. The BRT budgeted for fiscal year 27 at $30 million. For planning and studies, we have transportation studies, $500,000 in fiscal year 23, and the CXX study program for fiscal year 27 at $3.5 million. Safety and security total, you can see that total for 5 years, $782,735. And maintenance equipment total $195,401. Again, for the 5-year plan, $45.7 million for 23, $66 million for 24, $60.4 million for 25, $55.2 million for 26, and $124.2 million for 27, for a total 5-year plan, $351,696,777. This is the capital budget summary, and this is for fiscal year 23, because that is the capital budget. The other was the capital plan. The first year, as I stated, is the capital budget. So for fiscal year 23, I mentioned that our total expenses were $45,736,905, and certainly we have to balance that budget. So our revenues are projected at the same amount, $45,736,905, and you can see where we expect to receive the money from block grants, discretionary grants, the general fund, FDOT, money from the electric streetcar, and then our formula grants from FTA, 5339, 5337, 5307, and then the local impact and mobility fees, for a total of $45.7 million. And this is the detail of the fiscal year 23 budget. We've gone through the totals, but I'll just go through these slides so you can see what we plan to spend our capital dollars on in fiscal year 23. As I mentioned, the main category in revenue vehicles is replacement of our 40-foot diesel buses. We do have electric buses programmed for fiscal year 23, replacement of the paratransit vehicles, and the midlife overhaul to extend the life of our vehicles. And you can see the streetcar vehicle parts and engine and transmission replacements. This is facilities and construction total. So for fiscal year 23, you see we do plan to start on the heavy maintenance facility. That's with some initial planning and design, engineering and design, and program management. And you can see the other expenditures for facilities and construction for that total of $4.4 million. Technology, as I mentioned, CAD AVL is our major project, but certainly we always have to maintain our infrastructure, and we do plan to purchase a few support systems to manage our resources. And then the bus stops and shelters, planning studies, safety and security, maintenance equipment, all programmed for fiscal year 23. And so our total fiscal year 23 capital budget, as I mentioned, 45.7 million. That concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you for that presentation, Ms. Kirk. Any comments or any questions? Let's go with Ms. Crest.
Thank you. Was there anything in the budget related to bus rapid transit or BRT? I know that's been a big community discussion of late.
Yes, the BRT is programmed in the capital plan. I think right now it's programmed, let me go back up. It's programmed for
Sorry if I missed it.
2027, $30 million.
And has that been determined a location or just further study?
This is the preliminary budget, so it's certainly subject to change. Right now, we have it in fiscal year 27, and I believe Chris is on the call. He may be able to, from our planning department, or Omar, I know you're 2 days in, but we could certainly, if you want to know the exact location, because it's a study, you have to study it to figure out where it's going. So I don't think it's has the final determination, but we can certainly, and Ms. LeGrand is on your committee, so she can certainly share further information at the next meeting. Omar, did you want to say anything? I don't think so.
Yeah, just an introduction, that's all. I'm Omar Alvarado. I'm the Chief Delivery Officer here with HART. Like Ms. Kirk was alluding to, I've been here for all of 9 days. I started last Monday. So I can talk about a general process, but I think you guys are looking for something a little more specific. So, you know, I'll wait to get with my team and get back to you guys on that. But generally, as Ms. Kirk was saying, you know, we'll kind of study and we'll see where the corridors are and where we could see them being in the future. From that study, kind of determine some alternatives and options.
Right. And Omar is our chief planning person. So any future, and Chris reports to him. So any future questions, I'm sure Omar will be able to respond to those.
I saw somebody else. I'm sorry, is that all, Ms. Krause?
Thank you.
I saw somebody else's hand, Mr. Carbo.
Yes, I was also going to mention BOT, but I have a couple more questions. I understand that you have the transportation studies. Is there any money in that transportation studies budget for something like last mile initiatives? And I'll stop with that question there. I'll start with that question.
Okay, I'm gonna ask, because that is Chris's budget, and I thought I saw Chris on the line.
He was earlier. Still is.
Oh, did he leave?
No, he still is. He just needs to unmute himself.
And if I can get some clarity, when you say last mile studies, you're kind of alluding to like microtransit, first mile, last mile, that kind of service?
Yes.
Okay, if Chris can't unmute, we can certainly, Omar, we can certainly take these questions and get back with you.
Yeah, and again, I can just say from a high level, any of these studies, you know, we're going to look at all options. So first mile, last mile will definitely be something that's not ignored for sure.
And then as Lisa Silva, we had scheduled the HART Transit Development Plan, but that got delayed at the last minute, so we're only looking at the budget today. So I will pursue the whole transit development plan for a future meeting. So
well, Omar is responsible for that too, and I think he has a statement about the TDP. Omar? That we're working on.
Thank you, Ms. Kirk. So I'm working my way through our current TDP that we updated in 2017, working with our vendors and our local team internally here to update some information from that TDP. The big piece for us this past week, we spent a little time as a team talking through some of the goals, vision statements, and those kind of things. From there, our next step is really to collect some internal updated data, ridership, key performance indicators, things of that sort. And work with our vendor to produce updated maps and those kind of things. So as of now, we're still on target for our target expected date the fall here, so everything's on track. Don't really have any major updates from that standpoint, but right now is really just kind of the coordination effort, data collection, and things of that sort.
Go ahead, excuse me, Mr. Jenkins.
I'm on the ADA board and Livable, and so I have the information about the maintenance of the vehicle. I go on the van a couple days ago where there was no AC on the van. The box where you carry all the trips was out. Some of the left wires are not working. We gotta put the button to let it lift down. I mean, we got all the maintenance and I'm like today, what is the thing they're doing? And then my other question is the operators of the vehicles. Did they get their rating yet? That should be in the budget as well. There was no mention of that.
I think they just did the union contract, right? So they're gonna get their raises.
I'll
At some
let Ms.
point.
Kirk.
If you can help, if you can repeat, if someone can help me with the questions, and I'll be happy to answer them if I can.
Mr. Jenkins was mentioning he's on the HART ADA board, and he was on the van recently and bus, and there's wires that are loose, the lifts aren't working, there's no AC, and he wants to know about the maintenance and how soon those replacements are gonna be fixed, because he's having a hard time, and he knows other people in his community are as well.
Okay, that's an excellent question. I see Omar is writing that down, and we will check on that. And certainly, Kimberly is not on the phone right now. So we'll make sure that we share that with our, he was talking about paratransit vehicles?
Yes.
Okay.
You do have money budgeted, shown there.
Yeah, we do have money budgeted, and every year we do spend some of our money from our 5307 grant. We allocate that to paratransit. But if he's having a particular problem, because we're always trying to, upgrade vehicles, replace vehicles. But if he has experienced something that we need to address, then Omar will make sure that we share that with our operations staff. Does he know what vehicle he was on, or is that a general statement?
My vehicle where you had to put the button to let it lift down, the wire is loose. The other day, they got on the van to go to the doctor. There was no AC. The driver had to write down all of the mileage because the box, they keep the tips pulled out. He had a handheld radio, but the phone wasn't working on
We will share that information today and get right on that. Thank you for those comments.
And the second one was related to the raises. Have they gotten their raises yet?
The board just approved. That's the same thing that the employees are asking. The board just approved the 2 contracts yesterday. We have started, developing our file for retroactivity. We expect within 2 pays, they will have their retroactive pay and their base pay will be increased. So we're working on that as we speak. But the board just approved those 2 contracts yesterday.
In the next month or so. Yeah.
Any other comments or questions? Mr. Hay.
I have a couple questions. Under the budget for 2023, are we anticipating any new routes, or is this just to maintain the system as is?
This is to maintain current level of service.
maintain the service. Yeah. All right. Right, we saw the miles increase, so we were wondering if it, maybe it's frequency that is improving, maybe?
No, not frequency right now. We're still maintaining our what we call a modified Saturday service. So yeah.
All right. I saw that you have budgeted, I think I saw 3.2 million for bus shelters.
Yes.
How, like a ballpark figure, how many new ones does that, does typically 3.2 million get us? Is it 10, 50, 100 new bus shelters?
I can get back with you and get the plan because all shelters are not the same size and all locations don't have the same thing. So I don't think you can take that and divide it by a certain amount, a number, and get an average. So that is a good question though. And I see Omar is writing these questions down. So thank you, Omar. And so that if we don't answer the question today, who do we send the responses to?
Lisa Silva. And I do know working on a bus shelter study that we've been working with them behind the scenes on. So when it's ripe, I'll bring it through committee.
Yeah, just a statement. I drive around all the time and there's a lot of bus stops that have nothing, not even a bench. So if we could find more money for bus shelters and benches, that'd be great. Hopefully the tax passes. Yeah,
please.
Well, and that's one of our priorities, certainly, is customer amenities. And so that's why you see money every year for bus shelters to improve the customer amenities. But I didn't hear the name that we should send a response to.
Lisa Silva.
Okay.
And sorry, one final question. I noticed there was a reduction in advertising.
Yes.
Why? Because it seemed, was it 700,000? That seems to be, maybe I was looking at it wrong, but
no.
I was just wondering what would account for such a reduction. If we
And you're talking about revenue. Okay, 1 second. Okay.
Yeah, was that revenue?
Yeah, it's advertising revenue that you see the reduction.
Right.
Okay. And okay, and that's a conservative number because we are changing our approach to advertising. So we don't want to be too aggressive and over budget. We have a new contract. We have someone looking at our approach to advertising. You may not see all the wraps with the, advertising drugs and everything on the buses. And so we're looking at our approach to advertising, trying to elevate the Heart brand. And by doing that, we may lose some revenue. So we just have a consultant, advertising consultant, looking at that to decide how we're going to market and advertise the Heart brand. And so we just wanted to be conservative with our income. We may realize the same amount as we did last year, but right now we're not sure. So we put in the $500,000 for advertising, but that's what it is. We, right now we have minimum guarantees from the vendors that provide the advertising, but we just want to look at what they're doing for us and just evaluate that. So that is something that's under evaluation, and so we put in $500,000 for that.
Thank you. That's it for me.
Mr. Carver.
I did have one more. I've had members of our group ask me about the downtowner. I know that, over time with COVID and everything that you guys had to stop that, but I've had people ask about that and possibly expanding that to the West Shore area. I don't know if there's money in your studies for that.
Okay, there's been a lot of discussion about the downtowner, and I didn't hear the question though.
My question is there any money in your studies budget to look into bringing that back and possibly expanding it in the West Shore area?
Okay, we'll look at that. I know that that's something that we put on hold with FDOT. So we'll what we're considering, as Omar has stated, we're considering everything and trying to get the best level of service for Hart, but I can get a better answer and talk to, because I'm still looking for Chris. Is he still there? But anyway, because it's Chris's budget with all the planning studies, the detail. And so we'll make sure that we get that answer to you in terms of the downtown. Do you have that, Omar? Okay.
I do, yeah, and just remind me, the downtowner's like a micro transit service almost. It's like a small commute that goes kind of around the downtown area, or used to, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
In the area when about 70, there's a couple of 70 that been changed. But law has been changed on the, I think it was 30. So went on the phone and get those changes to it. I think it was 189.6 and but we have been changed to this thing and the envelope of like.
But it's not published.
Can someone help me with that question?
It's on the phone when you call up.
Yeah.
It gives you the what up. They have to change. Call the.
So she's not updated, right? So you don't really know.
You call the customers and get those.
Those are the ADA services, especially.
Those are all buses.
All buses that needs to be updated for the services.
So there's a couple routes they have been changed. There's a couple of hours that have been changed.
And to make
Is
sure.
it from my signage?
That's about the service of your operation. Couple of your bus routes have been changed.
Okay.
Have been changed.
Yeah, when
Okay.
he calls in, on the certain routes, 1, 6, 8, 9, 12.
Yeah.
And then it tells him to call customer service because something's changed. So he has to call again and then wait to talk to somebody. And it's just the communication isn't being updated, right?
Okay.
Ms. Kirk, thank you very much for your report. We're going to be moving on now, okay?
Okay. Thank you.
And I'm going to go to Mr. Hardy right now because he's up at the podium, and we'll go back to about Hillsborough County Border Preservation. Mr. Hardy.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize there was something else.
Well, yeah, you're there,
Wait,
so.
wait. I thought you were presenting from your laptop.
It is my
Oh.
laptop. I just need
Okay,
days to
scared.
presenter.
Okay. He's,
Thank you.
Am I able to present now?
oh, sorry,
There we go.
threw me off.
Yes.
I-
Ms. Kirk, you're finished. Thank you.
Thank you.
Does it show you?
I'm on.
He's good.
He's good.
All right. So I'm going to go briefly through this because of time. So now everybody knows about the T3 initiatives, so I'm not going to get into that. But really, adopting Vision Zero as a citywide policy is what's really important there. And we do have our Tampa Moves program to kind of develop our framework for the next 30 years. So now on to this. So does anybody know what Salt and Pepper, What a Man, and Jurassic Park and all that have in common? These were all hit movies and songs in 1993. That was the last time the gas tax was raised. So just a few facts on that. Gas tax is levied cents per gallon, not a percentage of the price. It has been raised for 28 years since 1993. It was raised 14.1 cents per gallon to 18.4 cents per gallon, where it is today. It's not pegged to inflation, and that's risen from rose 87% to 2022. That's actually an old number. That doesn't include the last year and a half or so. So this, again, this is an older number, but $1.93 gets you about $2 today. So you can see where the inflation there is. And then in order to combat that, it should be about 34.4 cents per gallon. to have the same purchasing power, and at the same time, fuel efficiency and electric vehicle adoption has increased, and people buy fewer gallons of gas because of that. In addition, we're looking at a fuel tax decrease of about 60% over by 2020 or 2030. At the same time, vehicles have increased on our road from 93 to 2020. You can see the increase that we have. And the big number there is our single unit trucks have gone up 120%, and our accommodation trucks have gone up 72%. Why that's important is pavements deteriorate because of truck traffic, mostly for damage. So the more truck traffic you have, the more quickly the pavement deteriorates. And the older the pavement is, the more quickly it deteriorates and the more costly the repair. So the worse it gets is an exponential increase in cost. We have, right now, we spend about 54% of our low option gas tax, that's our main maintenance bucket, on resurfacing. That doesn't include bridges or anything else. So the other 40% is all of our capital projects, all of our intersection improvements, maintenance, sidewalks, everything else, bridge rehab. Our total need for resurfacing, for all of maintenance is $40 million. We generally have $5.4 million on that. And right now we're at a 75-year paving cycle. So you likely, if your road got repaved recently, you're not going to see that again in your lifetime. So one other thing, as I mentioned, is roads deteriorate more quickly. In 2018, we came to council and they asked what would it take to maintain our current PCI of 71. It was 18 million. Now to maintain our current PCI, which is paving condition index, the grade of the pavement, of 64, we've decreased in the last 4 years. It's now 22 million. So you can see how those costs continue to rise, and they rise quickly. But that's not our only problems. We have 44 people killed on average per year, 289 people severely injured. In 2021, we had 81 fatalities. 31 of those were pedestrians and 6 bike fatalities as well. At the same time, San Francisco averaged 27 fatal crashes, but more than twice the population over the same time period. So if we're going to adopt Vision Zero, and that's the goal to eliminate all roadway deaths and life-altering injuries while increasing safe, healthy, and equitable mobility for all, we have to stretch our dollars. And that includes incorporating safety improvements into maintenance and prioritizing high injury network corridors to help get the city closer to that goal. I'm going to kind of briefly go over this. Part of the Vision Zero is safer streets. It's a safe system approach. So basically, we make our roads safe. All right. So when we resurface, we do have some complete street opportunities. First, design to your target speed. Speed limit reductions. You can narrow lanes. You can enhance signage and striping. You can add horizontal and vertical deflection. I'll get into what that means later. Accommodate alternative modes. You can add bike lanes, or really those micro-mobility lanes, bike parking, delineators and separators, conflict markings, and better transit accommodations. That last one could only, I mean, we've done bus days, full-on bus days with a recent project, but that could just as well be coordinating with HART and saying, hey, we're putting a crosswalk here. How about we move your little flag station up a block and things like that. So that gets you a better accommodation for basically no cost. And then build for people, frequent, safe, enhanced crosswalks. We generally have a rule of thumb of where we put our crosswalks, but we do want them to be frequent so that people use them. Curb extensions, painted bulkheads, refuge islands, and raised crosswalks are all tools that we can use that are relatively cheap. So one of the things I wanted to get across was when we were originally, when our planning group came on, they developed the high entry network as part of their Vision Zero action plan. So when they were looking at that, it was funny because when Surtax was there, originally came in, I had done some of the planning, even though I'm not a planner, but we didn't have that facility in-house yet. So a lot of the roads that I promoted were on the high entry network, and they were there for me because of pavement maintenance needs. So I knew we had to touch it. So when you think about that, though, there's no doubt in my mind that the reason why those roads are so dangerous is because dealing with 45-year-old designs. And let's say that road was even repaved 25 years ago, it was just copied, the design was just copied from what was there before. So this is a project that we did recently, and on Hyde Park and Plant, this is just, that left picture is just wide open asphalt. There's one dash lane line in the middle, and that's it. So it's really about reallocating pavement space to accommodate other modes, make it safer, delineate, separate and delineate, and then try to slow down speeds as well. So other elements that we've done, this is a recent project we did on Davis Boulevard, but in this picture you can see a few of those things. One is the curb extension. Notice that that island that we built doesn't affect the gutter line, and that's a real cheap island to build because you don't have to do any kind of drainage considerations or anything like that, but it does serve our purpose of kind of tightening up that radius a lot and then protecting the pedestrian as well. Conflict markings and bike lanes, that's conflict markings of the green there. In the background, you can see a new mid-block crosswalk with an RRB and a refuge island as well. And then we have enhanced signage and also redid the ADA curb ramps here. So just that little marking on the left, that little burn down is what they call this, but basically it's a pavement message. That's a very kind of like a hidden crosswalk that comes off of there's a lot of curvy roads on Davis Boulevard, but that was something that was very cheap to implement, and it really enhances the visibility of that crosswalk. When we did Harbor Island recently, we narrowed the lanes on the bridge and provided the delineators to provide a bike lane and also to pull traffic away from the pedestrian. So that's a very dense area with a very dense urban area with a very suburban roadway design. So it's kind of a interesting thing that we did there. So this is before on Davis Boulevard, and this is after. We also added some vertical deflection. I talked about that. This is a raised crosswalk with a speed table basically installed into it. And we also, we changed the standard on these a little bit to go up, the up ramp, if you will, is shorter than the down ramp, and that provides you with a little bit more of a jolt when you're driving over it. So it does work pretty effectively for controlling speeds through this area. This is another one that we did on Harbor Island as well. And we replaced these. We did not replace the speed humps that were on Harbor Island, which were probably the most aggressive speed humps I've ever driven over in my life. And we haven't gotten any complaints from people talking about speeders or anything. So these are actually working really effectively to control speeds on there. And then finally, it's not just resurfacing. One of our projects is our Marine Street Bridge, which we're still looking for funding. It was funded through surtax, but this is a $13 million project. And when we were looking at it, we have 4 lanes there currently. In order to, we didn't really need 4 lanes because they just peel off in 2 different directions, one-way bridge. So we're going to turn the middle lane into a left through. So it's a choice lane. You can either go left to Bayshore or go through to Cleveland. And we were able to reallocate that space to add widen the sidewalks on both sides of about 8.5 feet. And then we also put traffic railing in between the bridge and or the pedestrian and the vehicles. So right now there is no traffic railing there. That gives a vertical separation. And the other problem with that bridge is the traffic railing currently is on the outside, which is really low. So if you're riding on that, it's about riding across the sidewalk there, it's about half level. So you can imagine how kind of scary that is. But anyway, this gives vertical separation. We're able to put bigger barriers on the outside for pedestrians and cyclists. And it also ties you can see the street lights and the handrail ties into the Riverwalk. All in all, $13 million. It changes to that, the amount of money it costs to change this design to make it more pedestrian and micromobility friendly was $270,000. So you can see there's a very big bang for the buck here. And this is now going to be one of our Riverwalk crossings, so very important. In general, you look at about 15% increase on all of our complete street projects from what's needed for maintenance at about 15% to get all your complete street elements. So it's not a big cost for a huge safety benefit. And that's all I got. This is just the website for Tampa Moves 0.
Comments or questions? Ms. Kress?
I was in Hillsborough County yesterday, like outside of the city, which I don't usually leave my bubble, but and I noticed that they were using a very light covered pavement rather than like the typical kind of almost black that you see, and I wondered if that was a best practice or something else being considered just from a, temperature.
No, I'm not aware of any additives that you can get with that. Generally, you do see light colored pavements around here, but it's mostly due to oxidation. And our pavements actually age, they do oxidize pretty quickly, and they go from black to gray pretty quickly. But we actually got that question from Bloomberg when they came to town. They go, oh, what did they put in your pavement? I'm like, I swear it's nothing. It's just, it's the age of it. But I'm not sure what else they have on there. So, but that is a big thing right now to reduce the urban heat waves.
Very quickly, going south on Ashley Street, before you make the right onto Broreen, I travel that every day. Please, in each lane, paint which way they're supposed to go when they cross Broreen. I'm always in the lane that's supposed to go to Bayshore, but you always have that person that decides they want to go all the way across. Please.
Yeah, there's a bad weave there, and then also we are looking at, we saw that our downtown core police streets project will repave all that. It's delayed for other reasons, but that will be there.
Thank you. We got the new building going up there, and I'm sure that's all this.
My car just got totaled at that intersection.
Pardon?
My car was just totaled at that intersection.
Was it somebody just wanted to go all the way over to Bayshore?
A friend was driving my car, so I don't exactly know the details, but it's there.
Corridor planning and preservations, I thank you for your patience. We've got a few minutes if you want to go ahead and report. Please, thank you.
Hi, this is Richard Rank from the Hillsborough County Community and Infrastructure Planning Department. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I'll just do a brief intro. We're in the process of updating our corridor preservation plan, first time in about 13, 14 years. So in anticipation of that, we developed a corridor planning and preservation best practices study. The recommendations from that study will help provide guidance on our future corridor planning needs. I wanted to introduce Christine Williams, who's going to be doing the presentation. They're the ones who worked on the best practices study. She directs the planning and corridor management program at Cutter at USF. She's a multimodal planning specialist, transportation and land use policy analyst, and national authority on access management. Other specialties include this: corridor preservation, multimodal planning, thoroughfare planning, transportation equity, and land use and transportation policy. So hopefully, Christine, you can hear me introducing you, and you're up next.
Yeah, that was that was a lot. Can you see my presentation view, or are you seeing my notes view? You see the full screen?
Your presentation, but it's not 100% full screen. We're seeing the second slide as well.
Oh, you're seeing the notes view?
Yep.
How about now?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. And as Richard mentioned, I did take a look at some best practices and as well as legal context for the corridor preservation plan update to give the county some guidance on those topics. We did a report that I think he can drop a link to that report in the chat. And we did find that there continues to be a strong legal context for corridor preservation and management in Florida. As you know, multimodal planning laws support that. We also found a strong shift toward context-sensitive design, complete streets, grid networks in the contemporary corridor or thoroughfare plans, as they're commonly called across the country. And the need also for redundant networks and connected networks, both for congestion relief, but also a resilient system and placemaking strategies. And we looked at, smart classification, some of the emerging technology, EV charging plans to start to think about how do you incorporate that. So there were 4 areas, and I'm going to just briefly touch on some of the highlights for these 4 areas of best practices. And the first one really being that area of complete streets and context sensitivity. And Fort Worth, I thought, did a really wonderful job in their thoroughfare plan, completely grounded in a complete streets philosophy. And they include, because it's a regulatory plan, also some procedures for flexibility. So let's take a look at how they did it, a variety of area type. Well, in their plan, they use street types, and they built in the context issues into the street types themselves. And so you have activity streets, which are more pedestrian oriented, more downtown oriented, all the way to like a commercial connector, which is more of a strip commercial with off-street parking kind of things. So they built the design criteria into that, and they had some special corridors as well. And they used a variety of different plans and maps that they had created through their planning process to basically code the right-of-way for that system. So they started with, what's the street type? How many lanes do we have? Is it a designated transit facility, or is there some kind of special designation like BRT route and so forth in the transit plan? Is there a median, and what type of median? And they used various technical criteria to determine if they were going to add one. And then parking on street or parallel or diagonal or off street parking, what kind of parking, as well as the types of bike lanes. Is it a separated bike lane, off street path, on street bike lane, and then a variety of other technical inputs. So all of that was used then to create a coding system to develop some typical cross sections for all of their street types. And here's the coding system you could see, for example, for a neighborhood connector, where they're using different codes to determine all of those criteria and then establish a kind of a working right-of-way width in feet. And so the other thing I mentioned was the regulatory flexibility and application, which is important whenever you're requiring right-of-way. And not every street is going to be able to fit all the elements of their sections. And so they might have to reduce them or sacrifice them altogether in some instances based on whatever the modal priority is. And so they have a variety of mechanisms, amendments, waivers, and so forth to do that. Looking at Indianapolis, it's a little different. It's couched in their comprehensive plan and their transportation elements. Similar, it's an optional element like we do in Florida law. And again, a complete streets approach. So these are prototypical cross sections to guide development moving forward. We'll look at 2 different area types. So they use the concept of area type, and they just had 2, compact and metro. And then the typical kind of road classifications that you might see in any plan, more conventionally, these arterial and collector and local street, although they did have some greenway corridors as well and a railroad corridor for some special treatments. And then based on that area type and the roadway classification, again, and they came up with this coded system, this right-of-way standards and design guidelines, that kind of built it out based on number of lanes and speeds. And so then they looked at the various modal elements that they might want to have in that and created some prototypical cross sections. Broward County has had a traffic ways plan since the 60s, but more recently they've tried to build in the Complete Streets guidelines that were adopted by the MPO and others in the Countywide Planning Council. And so they've allowed that through amendments to the traffic ways plan. And so a local government can come in and say, hey, we want a context sensitive corridor. They'll designate it on the map. As you can see here in green, they've designated this one. This is Pompano Beach, yes. And so urban core, urban Main Street, urban residential are their context areas. So those, again, 3 simple context areas. And then they can adopt a specific context sensitive corridor plan with a little different design for that area. Texas has had this long tradition of thoroughfare plans. I think it's interesting now that some of the cities are adopting street master plans that establish very detailed grid systems. And this one in the small city of Bastrop established that exact type of plan. The driver that they said was flood mitigation and resilience to floods and wildfires. So they're trying to create a more compact growth pattern. And I think it could be useful for some of the communities in Hillsborough County that have really expressed a desire for more of a town center treatment in their community plans. And we see this also in some other counties in Florida, like Orange County, that has a planned urban village districts, and Alachua that requires connectivity in their cluster area. If we're planning an area for urbanization, we also should create a thoroughfare network that is redundant and has more alternative paths, because that makes it resilient to changes in traffic and traffic incidents. And from a livable roadways perspective, a more regularly spaced thoroughfare system also allows reduced cross-section widths. It's more conducive to non-auto modes. And so this strategy is being demonstrated in the new NCHRP right sizing guide, and they take an idealized grid, overlay it on an existing area to look at how would this possibly work in this area. And this is in Utah, Salt Lake City, but you can see their actual plan, and using that kind of approach, how they might build out additional network in that urbanized area to support a more robust thoroughfare network. Indian River includes an extended roadway grid network in their thoroughfare plan to provide basically for logical extensions of their roadways to undeveloped portions of the county. And they also have a subdivision collector map. We don't see that often. They enforce that to ensure that any proposed development that comes in extends those subdivision collector roadways to landlocked parcels. And the lack of a collector system really is one of the reasons why we do end up with more sprawl. So again, we need to build in collectors as well as the major thoroughfares into our system, and a more gridded network in the town centers. And then the high-tech corridors, well, we didn't find really any examples of people doing it yet, but certainly there are some classification systems that are coming out, smart road classification systems that are trying to accomplish that. And designating those high-tech corridors would help guide technology investments in those areas, as particularly where additional right-of-way might be needed for that purpose. And it's just a generally good planning strategy, as well as electric vehicles. FDOT has their EV master plan. So we might ask ourselves, you know, where are the needs for additional electric vehicle charging stations in certain areas of the county, particularly where they might involve the need for additional right-of-way if we're going to try to facilitate electric vehicles and charging along those corridors, so to create more certainty for people that buy those types of vehicles. And of course, the resiliency studies that are going on, the Tampa Bay pilot program study, we might want to start associating some of those more vulnerable links on the network with the right-of-way plan if there's some adaptation and mitigation needed that would involve the need for additional right-of-way in order to support kind of beefing up those corridors to handle some of the more issues associated with climate change, as well as storm surge from hurricanes and other types of threats. And then generally designating those certain corridors for the development of a parallel system or parallel relievers to improve resilience in the event of some incident, a major crash, or the need for evacuation. So there may be some right-of-way needs associated with that, and some general planning strategies to accomplish those alternate routes. So that's the general summary, basically repeating what I just said, as well as adding the need for a dedicated funding source for acquisition of additional right-of-way. So that is a very quick overview, and I'm going to turn it over to Richard to talk about next steps, and then we could answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. And next slide.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. So yeah, basically right now we're in the process of taking a lot of these recommendations and applying them to the corridor preservation plan, you know, being wary of the mobility element of the comprehensive plan, building and maintaining a transportation system that supports all users. Perhaps in the past, the corridor preservation plan has been more auto-centric, as most things have been in the transportation industry. But we're calling this a multimodal transportation corridor preservation plan, looking at possibly other opportunities. I mean, we're still talking highways, but looking at other modes of transportation, maybe other ways to provide avenues for those other modes of transportation. Next slide. So basically, kind of the backbone behind that is a restructuring of our road system, or looking at them from a context-based classification system. Yeah, we have a functional classification system that we're all familiar with, arterials, collectors, local roads. But we're kind of applying a context-based classification system using a knowledge of our future land use and policies, and an understanding of our livable communities to help guide this process. Next slide. So again, this is kind of the a summary of the process that we're looking to do for the corridor preservation plan, implement the vision that's in the comp plan. I don't need to read all these things, but ultimately it's boiling down, knowing what all these elements are, creating new, developing some scenarios that include new technology, and seeing how that might affect the needs of the corridor plan, optimizing network redundancy, looking at your vulnerable routes, the resiliency element that Christine talked about. And finally, figuring out if you know, additional right-of-way is needed for these corridors, either existing ones, new ones, and coming up with a updated corridor preservation plan as a result. Next slide. So this is our schedule. It's an aggressive one. We've started already, and we'll be coming back to you when we've you know, gotten a little further in the process. Right now, we've started our getting all the data collection, starting our first scenario out of 4. And that first scenario is basically like the LRTP process. It's kind of that base scenario to find out where our issues are, where the congestion is, where we need to tackle those places. And then we'll start developing other scenarios that look at multimodal corridors, different applications of technology, And we'll be going out with a pretty robust public outreach program looking at targeted stakeholders and focus groups who are experts in that new technology, and then coming back to the TPO committee when we have some more information. All of this resulting in an updated corridor preservation plan by the second quarter of next year. I think that's the last slide. If you have any questions for us, I'm here. Christine is here.
Thank you. Any comments or any questions? Mr.
Regarding the best practices report, I know in the city of Tampa, they're looking at adding CSX, potentially adding CSX right of way to the corridor preservation plan. I think you said Indianapolis did something similar. Is that correct? Was it privately owned rail that they're designating?
They were looking primarily at greenways, rails to trails kinds of issues in the Indianapolis plan, if I recall correctly. We did look at some corridor preservation strategies for rail corridors noted in the report, however, and the CSX study itself that's going to be undertaken. So I think it is a part of this. It is a part of the report, and it is part of the overall strategy that we were asked to look into.
Thank you.
Yes. First of all, I'd like Richard to congratulate you on looking at this opportunity fight, especially grid opportunities in our county, because we are so deficient in the grid opportunities. And a lot of those opportunities have been cut off by development as we have now. Maybe I'm restating something that everybody knows, but I'm glad you're taking on this task to get this done. It's sorely needed, and thank you.
Sure. Well, I'll say it's an uphill battle. You know, one of our exercises is exactly what you talked about, is like, you know, opportunities lost. Like if you look at the existing corridor plan and facilities that we were hoping to fill that grid cannot now be implemented because a development has happened. You know, there's some policy work that has to be done there. But we're going to do our best to try to find new opportunities. That's true.
Anything else? I thank you all, excuse me, I thank you all for this presentation. It was wonderful. Do we have any unfinished old business, new business? Lisa.
I would just like to remind the committee that under the addendum, the asphalt art safety study goes into some more detail and science to illustrate why some of the things Cal Hardy and the city are doing and other jurisdictions are so great for safety and affordable. And then remind you to take July off. We're in recess, so we will have a rigorous schedule in August. It's already quite full, so thanks for bearing with us to get in all of the June presentations today. So please adapt. Thank you.
Without any objection, we're adjourned.